Okay, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to our legislators for joining us. We did invite all of the members of the Knox County delegation. It's a busy time of year. Some of them were not able to be here, but we are happy for those who did join us. And I know that at least 3 of our panelists have a hard out at 10 a.m. So we're going to have a full hour here with this full panel, and then after 10 o'clock, we'll see who's still here and who wants to keep going. But to get us started, and I think you all can share your microphones here on the table, maybe if we could just start at this end, go down to the far end, identify yourself, say what district, where it is that you represent, and if you could each name one bill, one piece of legislation in particular that you are working on this session. It doesn't have to be one of the big ones in the headlines. We're going to ask about those, but just let us know what you are personally working on. We'll start right here with Representative Dave Wright.
Testing. Please allow me to stand. The first thing I'd like to say is thank to the League for presenting us. And the journalist.
It's joint.
Because I will go back to my 10 years as being a county commissioner. This event occurred at the News Sentinel. And at that particular time, as a county commissioner, I would say, because I wanted to be there, look at what they are doing to us. And now I am a they. So again, my name is Dave Wright. I live in the Gibbs community. I represent the rural part of Knox County, from north of Halls around through Corrington, Ruddy, Gibbs, Carter, Thorn Grove, Riverdale, to across the river in Anderson. Let me reserve my right to time to talk about a favorite bill. Let me think about that.
Thank you, and thank you to the Journalists Association and the League. For years this used to be 2 events, and the journalist group had the whole panel, the League had Meet Your Senators, and it was kind of a redundant thing, and I think it's gotten better with the joint cooperative putting this together. And I do apologize, the dental hygienists are also meeting. They meet this time every year, and we're missing the first hour plus of it to be here with you, and we promised them we'd get there for the last 45 minutes. So that's why we got to scoot out the door. Becky Massey, I'm in the state senate. And I'm not going to sit there and explain all my district, because Senator Briggs and I, we look at that we serve all of Knox County. I just happen to have 3 times more square miles than he does, and I touch 6 of the 8 counties that Knox County touches. But I'm in District 6. I'm honored to chair of the Transportation Committee and then serve on the Health Committee. But probably my #1 bill that I hope to get across the finish line, which means funded this year, is my Promise in Futures. We started it last year. And child care is one of the biggest issues challenging our state. There's about a $2 billion economic loss because of lack of affordable, accessible, quality child care. And a few years ago, I sponsored a bill that did a deep dive looking at the child care issue. And so as a result of that, we came up with this Promise in Futures bill, which is similar to the Tennessee Promise, but what it does is after individuals can receive their child care supplements and basically grant scholarships, whatever are available, this would pay the last dollar for this child care, early education. Right now we met with the school board yesterday, and one of the things they talked about is we need to, a large percentage of a child's brains develop by age 5. And so we need to make sure that it is a quality child care. So we're working right now with the Department of Ed to develop some metrics to make sure that it is quality. But we want to give people the opportunity to be able to have child care so they can work in a productive, everybody's needing employees. And so we're real excited about that. It would be funded through the sports gambling money. They haven't been willing to let some of that go yet, but in the state constitution, it does say that any of the lottery type, gambling type money does have to go toward education, including early education. So I'm really excited about that, but it's, like I say, we got to work on the funding part and get them to agree to do it. So but it's an important issue. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sam McKenzie. I represent the 15th District, and you all are in the 15th District, so welcome. Our 15th District is downtown Knoxville, South Knoxville City, East Knoxville, and then Mechanicsville, Lonsdale, and Beaumont, right there around Knoxville College in that general area. But I'd also like to thank Miss Kathy Mack and her staff for opening up this wonderful facility, which my grandkids attend during the summer, and I did as a youth. Believe it or not, I was young at one point. You know, it's as you know, it's been an interesting time there in Nashville. But if I had to focus on one bill, and I've been working this bill for about 3 years. It's what I call the 2% bill. Just to give a data point. In the 20 years we've had the lottery, about $30 billion have been spent on scratch-off, Powerball, Mega Millions, all that, statewide. In the 2 years we've had sports wagering, $10.5 billion have been spent here in the state. So, and of that money, roughly 80% goes into the lottery fund, which is already, it's all about to be endowed. So there's capacity there. So what my bill, we call it the 2% bill, take 2% of that 80% and put in the fund to be administered by the Human Services Commission there in the state. And that 2% to go to the deep rural youth and the deeply urban youth, which I tell folks, they may have different skin tones, but they're the same kid. They have the same home life, the same lack of structure, just to try to get small organizations that do that great work in the community, that knows those kids, to allow them to apply for those funds, be about $1 million a year. And so pushing it, it's hard to get things out of the lottery, as Senator Massey said, but starting to get some momentum on that. It's just, to me, it makes sense. These really are excess funds, unless we're going to open up the pipeline and give more of our kids access to higher ed dollars, which I think we should do. These funds are just going into a bank account right now. So let's put those funds to use.
Thank you. State Representative, House District 90, Gloria Johnson, happy to be here. I want to talk about my mental health, my Youth Mental Health Act. We talk a lot in the General Assembly about mental health, and making sure that kids have good mental health is important. And we are now in the top 10 in the country, top 10 states for youth suicide. I took a piece of legislation. I met a woman at NCSL, at our National Legislative Council, and where we all meet together. But they passed a bill in Colorado for youth. Any child could request mental health services, anyone under the age of 18, and go to a website, kind of fill out a screening tool, and then they would be assigned a therapist or counselor in their county for at least 6 visits. After the 6 visits, they would be reevaluated to see if there was a need for more visits. Colorado was also in the very top of youth suicides. After a couple of years of this program, for the first time in history, Colorado's youth suicide rate dropped, attributed to this bill. They have 64 counties, 62 counties have utilized this legislation. Kids have been using it with kids with their parents. And it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. It was supposed to sunset, and they have now made it permanent because it was successful. Cost Colorado about $9 million a year. We have the Youth Mental Health Fund, $250 million that they put in a trust fund to use the interest for mental health each year. To my knowledge, that interest money has not been used for mental health yet in our schools. It may have been at the end of last session, it hadn't. I will check to see. The only amount of money that had been used so far was to pay, as of the end of the last session, was to pay the financial managers of the plan. So the interest from that youth mental health fund would actually come very close to funding this plan. So anything that we can do to address that, so when our kids get out of school, they've gotten that mental health care they need and have had it along the way. So we are having healthier young people coming out of school. I just think that's critical.
I'm State Senator Richard Briggs, and just like Senator Massey said, I represent Knox County. The districts really, the district lines to Senator Massey and I are official, so we take care, or try to take care of Knox Countyans regardless of where they're from. And I do want to thank the League of Women Voters. I try to participate both in forums like this and as in candidate forums when I was running for office. And I think it's an opportunity for the public to be able to put an eye on their candidates, so we have an opportunity to meet you when we're here. So I really want to thank the League of Women Voters and the professional journalists for putting this on. I'm going to keep my comments on my bills very briefly. First of all, I have 3 bills that deal with affordable housing, but one that's not as well known that I've been pushing is a resolution that deals with term limits for Congress. Every day I turn on the newspaper and all I see is a dysfunctional Congress. We need the opportunity for other people that want to serve to go there and not be so entwined with the partisanship that's just, it really leads to nothing.
Dr. Briggs, I cannot help but follow up on that and ask you, would you support that for the state legislature as well? Because obviously the state legislature does not have term limits.
You know, I tell you, that's a very fair question. But I think there's an essential difference. One is we are what the founders of the country anticipated. We are part-time legislators. Anyone who uses the legislature as their full-time occupation has taken a vow of poverty because we don't get paid enough to support anything. And we're just there really working about 3 months out of the year. The rest of the year, we're home, supporting our families, we have a job, we're in the supermarkets, we're at church, we're at gatherings, Little League ball games, and we have an opportunity to do a lot of face-to-face encounters with our citizens. And I think it's very different being a citizen legislator and being a full-time professional legislator.
Representative Wright, did you think of any bill that you wanted to talk about?
Yes. Let me back up and say that my reserve spot there was on a bill. So as I look around the audience, it's a pretty mature audience. There are several young folk here. Yeah. Yeah. But the bill that I would like to pick on for just a second is in children, we have the opportunity to have daycare in small numbers. But in senior citizens, we do not have small number, and I don't want to refer to it as daycare. I will refer to it as the Golden Girls rule, where one person may have the house and would like to have 2 or 3 share in the expense of being able to live in a residential setting. So I'll back up to earlier in what we're talking about. The Knox County delegation does have a mom. The Knox County delegation does have people that have experience at county commission. Commissioner McKenzie and Commissioner Briggs and Commissioner Wright entered Knox County Commission at the same time. It's just that our education took a little bit longer here than it did down there. which leads to term limits. I think term limits are in place. I totally agree with term limits. You either need to move up or move out. But anyway, back to my Golden Girls bill. And Mom, it's Mom's bill. I'm just hoping I can get it through the House. Sorry it took so long to give you my favorite bill.
All right, thanks a lot. Well, I think the first question we should ask should be about school vouchers or education freedom scholarships or whatever terminology you want to use. This has obviously been identified by Governor Lee as his top or one of his top priorities for the session. And Representative McKenzie, I think you are alone on this panel of actually sitting on an education committee in the House. So I was wondering if you could give us, first of all, an update on where this bill is. I know nobody has actually seen the official text of it yet. And how do you see the prospects for this? Not just like what do you think about it yourself, although I'd be happy to hear that, but how is this going to go? I know there's a lot of questions about it in a lot of parts of the state. A lot of the more rural districts have concerns about it. So yeah, if you can catch us up there.
Thank you, and you're absolutely right. I guess a version of the bill, I guess they thought it was the final bill, slipped out, and I think several folks screenshotted it and were able to see it. And it was a bad bill at that time, and I think they realized it. So we've not seen what this bill looks like up to this point, which is kind of disturbing because it's a major piece of legislation. It'd be good for us to be able to digest it because, again, as we talked about, this is a part-time thing, and we should be done by the end of April. As you know, I won't spend a lot of time. I'm against the bill. $7,000. A portion of the people are at 300% poverty. Other folks will use it to supplement. If they go on the web or Catholic, they're just going to say, "Hey, I get a free $7,000." What if they're homeschooled? It's a really poorly devised bill. Public education is just that. All for private education. Apply for scholarships or you pay. But this bill as it stands, $7,000, when you look at the top 10 schools in Knox County, and severe with the King's Academy, that was the cheapest one. The King's Academy is $6,800, but that's not including transportation, long way to Seymour, books, clothes, things of that nature. So if they really are trying to reach that kid in my district, this isn't enough. It's nowhere near enough. So what is it? It's an attempt, in my humble opinion, to undermine the public school system and structure. We're not giving enough right now. We're not giving enough at the state level to our public schools. That's the best thing we can do is undergird them. Do we have issues? Yes, we have some issues. But there are issues that can be fixed. And here in Knox County, I like our school system. Austin East got an F. Karnes got a D. I don't know what the difference is between the D and the F. They make a big deal. But we can fix these things, and Austin East is fixing. When they took the data, if they took that data to that, then we'll be improved. But those rural representatives, that's what I'm trying to appeal to. If you're in Hawkins County, what good is this going to do to you? You can't get to Weld. You can't get to Catholic or Christian Academy from Hancock County. So what are you going to have? You're going to end up with someone saying, "Hey, I could open up that's a decent line of profit. So I'm opening up a strip mall school in these counties, or I'm opening up a church school, which I'm not equipped to have, but hey, we got to have a need there." So you're going to end, and what about testing? Are we going to test these kids? You can't force a private school to take the TCAP test. So how are we going to measure third grade reading? How are you going to measure these things? You're not going to do it. Again, it's an ill-advised concept that has not worked in other states. Last thing I'll say, a couple other states have implemented this because that's what they do, find a state and then try to roll it. The costs are just doubling, and you're decreasing what you're giving that public school system. It's not going to work. I think there's enough excitement right now to vote it down, but I know arms are being twisted as we speak.
Does anybody else on the panel want to weigh in? Your thoughts on the bill or what you're waiting to see on it?
I think everybody knows.
Representative Johnson?
I mean, again, I just have to talk about how there is zero transparency when these public dollars go to these private schools. They are not required to teach the curriculum that the state has created. We've spent the last 10 years in the Tennessee legislature demanding all of this testing and all of these evaluations for teachers and highly qualified, certified teachers, and none of this is required in private schools. They can hire non-certified teachers, and they can teach any curriculum they choose. And so if we're going to use public tax dollars, I think the public deserves to know the curriculum that they're teaching. They need to be teaching the same curriculum. They need to be taking the same tests. If you don't take the same test, you cannot compare. And we have seen that. There's been a comparison with the vouchers since they've started, and Tennessee students with vouchers are performing worse than their public school peers. It's not working in Tennessee yet. We don't expect it to work because it hasn't worked in a single state that started vouchers. And then you see in a state like Arizona, who is $450 million short in their budget because their voucher program costs that much more than they expected. It is hurting people's budget. We see in states like Wisconsin, who have had vouchers for a while, 70% of the kids using vouchers never once attended public school. They're getting their private school subsidized. And I really think that we need to invest in our public schools. According to our own comptroller's office, we're underfunding our schools by about $1 billion, and our teachers are still making less today than they did 10 years ago when you take into account cost of living. And we take more money out of that to go to privates that don't even have to hire certified teachers. I don't see this as working at all, and it hasn't so far yet.
Senator Briggs, did you have anything you wanted to say on that?
Anyone that wants to email my Senate address, I can send you my worksheet that I'm using on what this is going to cost. This isn't really about, I'm not addressing whether it's good or bad as far as the education, but what Governor Lee's original plan showed was before the first nickel is spent on a child going from a public school to a private school, it'll cost the state $833 million. There's 105,000 students in private schools, and it'll cost over $700 million for them to continue in. These are kids that have never been to a public school. We have 13,600 kids that are homeschooled. That's another $95 million. If just 5% of the 1 million children that are in public schools in Tennessee takes the vouchers, the cost will be $1.2 billion. If 10% takes it, it'll be over $1.5 billion. I'm concerned about where that money's going to come from, and is that going to come from public education? I'll add one more issue on this. I represent Knox County, as I said a little bit earlier. I'm going to vote my district. If you live in Knox County, we had Farragut High School that had 33 students that either were National Merit Semifinals or National Merit Commendable. We've got at West High School the International Baccalaureate program that's recognized internationally as one of the most rigorous secondary school curriculum that are available. We have the Career Magnet School out of the Pellissippi campus at Strawberry Plains, where a student can graduate high school with over 60 credit hours of college. Now, how can you say that college courses are somehow less than what you get in private schools? We have the STEM Academy downtown. I have two of my great nieces and nephews that go there, and the third one will be going there in a year or two. We have a liberal policy. I want to commend our school board and our school superintendent. We have a very liberal policy about moving from one school to another. And about the only exception is if the school that someone wants to move into is overcrowded, they don't. But if you live in another school district and you want to go to one of those schools, you want to go to West High School to do the International Baccalaureate program because it's a very rigorous program, you can do that. So I can't say that I'm opposed to the specifics because we don't know what's in the bill yet. But the principle of it costing so much and just saying that Knox County children don't have a choice, I think is not being completely truthful.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
And yes,
It's on.
hello?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. As we've said, I do not serve on an education committee. And so that bill, and I've heard that the bill language will be out next Friday, is apparently, but like I say, I'm hearing things as kind of talking to people, but it will have to go through the education committee and then the finance committee to see if there's the funding is available. By the time it would get to the Senate floor, it's probably got enough votes to pass if it goes through both of those committees. But also bills change, often they can change significantly before they, from the time they're introduced to the time they get to the floor through the amendment process. So one, I try not to ever say 100% yes or 100% no until I see what bill I'm voting on. Because it could be different. There could be a testing requirement. There could be some of these things that people have the concerns about. I have those concerns too. I also, coming from a disability provider background, I'm concerned about the kids with disabilities that wouldn't have probably the opportunities, kids that are experiencing some mental health issues. So in the past, I have not voted for, I've not really voted against, but I've not voted for the voucher-related bills. I always try to keep an open mind. I'm going to be sending out surveys through my e-newsletter. If you don't get that, you can email my office, but also we'll be posting on Facebook and getting input. I'm talking to people. We're keeping up with all the input we get, whether it's in person to person or phone calls or emails or letters. So we're talking and listening, and I'm asking just in conversations, since I'm not on those committees, I'm talking to people about the concerns that are being brought to me. So we'll be watching and working and seeing where it lands.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much.
I agree with everything it said.
Okay. And after this question, I will open it up to a question from the audience. So if you have a question, think about it, and you can raise your hand. But first, I'm going to ask this to Senator Massey, since we have the chair of the Transportation Committee here. Really, two different issues, maybe neither directly related to legislation you're considering this year, but one is, of course, with the new TDOT plan that came out. One thing we found out, and Mayor Jacobs has talked about this a little bit, is that some of the projects planned for the I-40 corridor through West Knox County have been either scaled back or delayed at Campbell Station Road and at Watt Road, and that's a concern, obviously, for the folks who live out there who are looking for those improvements. So anything you can tell us about that would be great. And then second, I think last year when we were here, there was some discussion about pushing for a long-term bypass route for I-75. I'm just curious if that has moved at all or what the next steps in that process would be.
Okay, thank you. It's a good question because I'm in a lot of these conversations, but the first one that's probably easier is the bill we passed last year authorized the ability to do choice lanes in Tennessee in the 4 urban areas. Had we not passed, we put a record amount of general fund monies into road projects. Had we not infused that $3 extra billion into these road projects, it would have taken kids in high school would have been senior citizens by the time we got through all those projects. So we had to do something different. The choice lane, we put also $300 million into each county's road fund. I mean, not each county didn't get $3 billion. But or 3 million. But it's but we put that in there, the 300 million, which was 15 times what each county normally gets for their county road funds, so they could do local projects. But the choice lane projects basically, because the biggest problem is in the urban areas. If we hadn't done something like these choice lane, authorized these choice lane projects, all the funds that we have coming in Tennessee would have had to go into the urban projects and at the expense of not doing anything in our rural areas or even some of our suburban areas. So what they're doing is they're looking at each of the 4 urban areas, and it was divided equally. A private investor would come in and do a public-private partnership on that project in that area, and then we would leverage that money we saved by doing that choice lane, let's say in Nashville, where they're looking at the first one going, and we can use that same amount in suburban or rural projects. But as a part of that, I've been talking to them for years about doing a new bypass study, because the old bypass study, the orange and the blue, you know, we could probably come up with any color, but it's obsolete. And I said, just do me a study, because while we don't have sustained long traffic jams, we still have 5 of the top 7 highest average daily traffic counts in the state. And that's because we're 2 interstates combined into one for 18 miles. And so it's challenging. And if they're not moving here, they're driving through here to get north, south, or east, west. And so the second we finished passing the Transportation Modernization Act, and I was able to be the sponsor that carried it through the legislation, and it was really cool. In 7 weeks' time, we passed that with 79% of the vote, bipartisan support. And it was a good bill, and it needed to happen. That doesn't mean people don't have pros and cons of different pieces of it, but it was a good piece of legislation. But the second it passed, I said, okay, about my bypass study. I need a bypass study. So what I'm looking at is, as they're looking at a potential choice lane project here later on, then, they'll do the first one in Nashville and get the kinks worked out and figure it all out. But they can also look at the bypass potential, and whether at some point that solves our problem and we don't need the choice lanes here, or whether we ultimately need both. But they are going to be working on that study. Regarding the other thing, the Department of TDOT basically decided that what had been happening is they put all these projects on the list, but they wouldn't be funded. Very few would be funded for, in an immediate type future. You might be on a 3-year plan, but you might have year 1 funded, but then you might not get year 2 and 3. So they said, we need to be more efficient, which is on our short-term list. So they went in, they looked at all the projects in the state. They analyzed, all the components of it, whether it was economic development, whether it was the traffic load, whether it was the growth in that area, and all the various things that they would look at. And they kind of charted them all out, gave them point scales, and they came down with the ones that needed to be first in the 3-year plan, that they said if they're in the 3-year plan, they're going to be funded. That funding is going to be there. And then they did years 4 through 10, which can be movable. I mean, that can change based on the change of what's happening. And so what happened was, a couple of years ago, there was some extra general fund money several years ago that they put some economic development projects into the budget from some general fund money. They probably did it a little quicker than they needed to, but they allotted a certain amount for Campbell Station and a certain amount for Watt Road interchanges there. And Campbell Station has been talking to us, Senator Briggs and I, for years about the need to expand that, just because of the load and the backup and the growth out there. Watt Road, they're doing some major economic development up there, a huge project. So what happened was, one, they were underfunded in the budget. So the budget that was amounted to it is not enough to do what needs to be done. Campbell Station, they would have to widen the bridges, expand the bridges over it so they could expand it underneath it. And so they pushed it down, further down the line in the project list. the Watt Road, they scaled down what was originally planned because they didn't have the funding for it. And so we're in communication, we're having meetings, we've set up, we've met with all the officials out there. I'm having conversations with the administration at TDOT, and we're still seeing if we can, what we can work out there. So it's an ongoing process. And there's other projects around the state that I'm having to work on too, but that's the one that concerns Knox County. Thank you.
Anybody else on the panel want to talk about TDOT, infrastructure, any of those issues? Stay going. All right, do we have a question from the audience? Joyce Fell, right back here.
So I'm going to ask you about a bill that addresses wetlands preservation and development, and it's HB 0018 and SB 0091, and this bill is an outgrowth of an unfortunate Supreme Court decision from 2023 that relaxes restrictions on wetlands development. And heretofore, Tennessee has had very good protection for our wetlands. The wetlands are extremely important for things like flood control and erosion control, recreation, environmental concerns. And there are a lot of people in our state that are very concerned about this bill, and I was just wondering how many of you know about it, and if you do, what your feelings are about it. Thank you. And thank you so much for you folks that came and showed up today and are accountable to the community. We really appreciate it.
Question, real quick. Is that Vaughn's bill?
No, it's Hensley in the Senate, and is it, I don't know how you say, Sapicki? How do you say it?
Sapicki, you got it right.
Okay, in the House.
Yeah.
I do. No,
This bill, I know it made it through House Ag. It is a bad bill. We are, many of us are trying to fight it. I've had a lot of conversations because we've talked about it with one of my colleagues who's in the Ag Committee, which is where it came through. It's in serious danger of passing. There's sportsmen who are against this bill. There are a variety of people against this bill. My fear is that there's not going to be enough political will to stop it, however, and it is definitely a bad bill.
I would like to encourage all of you to vote against it.
I will.
Let me do one more question here, and then we'll go back to the audience. While we have everybody here, and I don't want to make this too personal or put anybody on the spot, but Dr. Briggs, you and Representative Wright have a bill that would limit people's ability to run for more than one office at a time. This has been perceived by some people as potentially having an impact on Representative Johnson, as she is also running for the U.S. Senate. I was just wondering if you want to take the opportunity to tell us about the bill, the background of it, and what you all are trying to accomplish with it, and Representative Johnson, you'll have a chance to weigh in as well, too.
Yeah, I'd be very glad to talk about it. The bill was brought to me, we talked about it 2 years ago because in Farragut there was an individual that was going to run both for mayor and board of alderman. Any of you that live in Farragut know that there's 5 members of the board of aldermen. The mayor is the chairman and a voting member. If an individual was the mayor and an alderman, he would have one individual would have 2 of the 5 votes. Also, under Tennessee law, one individual can run for any number of offices. There are some constitutional limits. You can't run for governor and mayor of a city. There's some things like that. But generally, on many of these offices, you can run for as many as you want to. And if you win one of them, you can decline to serve in the others. And immediately after you win, the county or state or whatever it is would have to have a special election. Special elections in Knox County can cost between $300,000 and $400,000. And I also think if somebody is wanting to run for multiple offices, the expectation would be if you are running for an office that you'll serve in that office if you win. The other issue is it's possible for a person in some counties to be a county commissioner, city councilman, school board member of the city schools, school board member of the county schools, and a state representative all at once. And I just think that anyone, there may be other offices they could hold at the same time, but I think putting that much power in one individual's hand is not healthy for democracy. To get back to the specific incidents on Representative Johnson here to my left, she has so many secret Republican admirers, I can't get this thing through the Senate. So the Republicans are really defending me very, very well. I had it up for a vote on Thursday, and the Republicans stood up for Gloria and said, we're not going to vote for it.
Whoever wants to go next.
Y'all don't know how funny that is. You know, it's similar to the bill that was passed last year. The timing of it. As you all know, and last year, once folks won in city council that they didn't think were going to win, how do you fix this? How do we fix Knoxville City Council? Do we fix it at the local level? No, let's pass a state law that puts the thumb on how city council is being run. You know, for decades, centuries, dare I say, this statewide running, citywide, you run in your district, top 2 run citywide, it was done along racial lines. But now when it got political, and people are trying to, well, obviously saying, well, in this nonpartisan race, we kind of know who's who, and the Republicans are losing out when we pass a law. And it's similar to that. We have representatives that are, Esther Helton sits on their city council somewhere outside of Chattanooga, and she's serving there. She's not running again. You know, but when it comes down to something they want to put their thumb on, and I do say that, that's super majority, I'll be clear about what I'm saying here. They pass these high-level laws that don't give local control. I got a basic fundamental issue with that, and I agree with Senator Fred Thompson in that. You know, so I wish we could get back to a lot of that. But the last thing I'll say about this one and in the Senate, I'm hearing that there's a senator that wants to become the congressman at Congressman Green. Now he said he's not running. So it was on the Senate floor. It did not pass.
We didn't vote on it.
I mean, it rolled 1 week, but it made it through the committees, all through the committees. And it was sitting on the Senate floor for yesterday's vote, and they rolled it because it affects them now. So, these are individuals. So again, this is one of these things. Let's not pass individually pointed laws because they have unintended consequences that may end up biting you on the back end. So I'm just hoping we get back to just passing laws that benefit the entire state. If there's something bad's happening, let's pass a law and fix it, but not point it at one person.
And I do want to say one thing related to talk about if you have to have a special election. Well, my colleagues in the House last year weren't concerned about expelling 2 members that they knew would be brought back, and they didn't bat an eye at the cost of 2 special elections for members that they expelled.
And Representative Wright, you're the House sponsor of that bill.
Thank you for the question, because I would like to divorce all personality from it and remind you that there is a sitting city council person who's a member of the state legislature. And to remind you that out of Hamlin County, there was a member of county commission in the past who has been a member of the state legislature. And also to say that a person in Greene County campaigned for the state house and the U.S. House of Representatives in Washington. So I'm a person that's standing saying, I believe in term limits. And I'm a person standing and saying, I understand, in my mind, you can only serve one master. You have to have your heart and soul in the one office that you're serving in, and that's the reason I've co-sponsored the bill. Then I'll also give you some homework. Look at the House Election Subcommittee and listen to the testimony that was given by citizens.
All right. question right back here, yeah.
Before I ask my question, can I clarify, Ms. Massey and...
If you get a mic.
We can't hear you.
Ms. Massey and Dr. Briggs, are you on the health committee that the Jason Zachary's 1895 bill is currently in?
I'm a physician. I've been trying for 8 years to get on the health committee. I'm not on the health committee.
I'm on the health committee. I don't know bill numbers, but,
This is the criminal offense of abortion trafficking of a minor.
it's not been before our committee yet, so there are over 1,200 bills filed, every year. And so unless I'm sponsoring them, or it's before my committee that is coming up, I'm not aware of the details of it.
Then I'll just ask, thank you, I'll just ask general. If this bill were to come across for any of you to have a vote, so it's a criminal offense of abortion trafficking of a minor. So we're forcing our young people, no matter how they might be impregnated, to have an abortion, or we're going to criminalize and prosecute someone who may assist them. I would like to know what kind of data and information would you look into to help you make a decision? What kind of information about the health of the child, the health disparity that might happen? When I lived in Ireland, when they reversed their ban on abortion because too many women had died because they were not able to get the care they needed, their healthcare decisions were made by someone other than them. So if this happens to our children whose small bodies are not able to carry a pregnancy, what information are you going to use in order to make a decision on this bill?
Anybody want to take that one?
I'll very quickly say I'll stand by what I had in my bill last year. I couldn't get it all passed, but you could go look at Senate Bill 745. It's still listed up there because I addressed all those issues.
So, Representative Zachary's bill, I know it was heard in the Health Committee, the Health Boards, in this past week, and on the representative side, the House of Representatives side, and it's listen to the testimony is what I'll say. I think it's self-explanatory. I think Representative John Ray Clemens did a good job of peeling the layers of the onion back, just to say that this is just a mean-spirited bill, and it's unenforceable. So you're basically saying, if you take someone across the state, aunt, uncle, friend, that somehow they're and this is a major, charge against them. It's not going to be able to be enforced. Just at the level, it's not even getting to the details of the health of the woman and of the girl, and the whole thing about what happens with that child afterwards and what. None of that, but just on its face, it's one of and that's why I said we have the most stringent, I would dare say, out of the 50 states. We're probably 50 today in how we deal with a woman's right to just own her body from a reproductive standpoint. And we're going to continue to pile on. This makes no sense. Again, all I can say about it is I will vote against it if it makes. I hope it doesn't make it out of committee. I didn't think it was going to be carried. I thought it was just one of these placeholder bills, but it looks like it's going to move forward, at least on the House side. Probably get the votes, unfortunately. And I'll ask y'all just to stay tuned and listen to the testimony. To me, it's disturbing. I'll ask you to just listen to. I think it was on Wednesdays in the Health Subcommittee.
And you asked how I would get my information. I talk to people, I listen to people. We have people that are through our office, they email us. The one thing I always recommend, don't hit the push button emails, because when you get 300 emails of one email, you just ignore them almost, because they all say the same thing. You read one and you know the rest says the same thing. But I talked to Senator Briggs. I was supportive of his bill last year. I signed on the incest and rape bill because it affected the youngest of the youngest. It was for kids under 14. But I have to look at each bill separately, listen to the testimony, and we always do have pro and con testimony in there. But, I try to do my due diligence and, and go from there. So, thank you.
We have another audience question while we have the full panel here. Yeah.
Returning to the theme of education, I'm interested in each member's position on the state of Tennessee rejecting $1.9 billion.
They did reject it. That's not an issue.
Okay, so the question was about the discussion around rejecting federal education funding. Anybody want to take that?
I don't believe that would happen, and I'm not supportive of it.
Same answer.
Yeah, I think that it had a little more teeth in the House than it did in the Senate, thank you. But, yeah, refusing money that feeds kids, second bulk of that money, special education funding, critical, and Title I funding that brings equity to our school, much needed equity. We're not there yet, but we have to have those funds to make sure that every school has a well-resourced classroom. That I don't know what that was about and why anybody thought that was a good idea, but certainly the people fought back on that, and that's really important.
It's dead.
It's dead.
It's dead. That's as definitive an answer as we've gotten on anything here. I'm going to ask one more question while we still have a Republican member of the House here. There's been a lot of discussion about House rules in the past year, coming out of the session last spring, the special session this summer. On the one hand, there's obviously been a desire by the House majority to try to have some order and standards. On the other hand, there are critics saying that a lot of these rules are designed to shut down minority legislators, shut out the public. I guess, Representative Wright, what are your thoughts on these rules?
A very bearing question on how we have discussions on the floor of the House. I've been a member 5 years. I've been there 5 winters, and this is the 6th winter. I'm not allowed to stand up and voice my opinion on the House floor without following a certain procedure. And the attempts that are being made right now to preserve that kind of discussion, I'm in favor of. There are certain items of decorum. Used to be there was only 1 or 2 things that could be accomplished in trying to maintain that. I could stand up and do something out of order, and you could put something in my personnel file saying, don't do it again. Or I could stand up and be out of order. The only other thing that could be done is a vote brought to send me home. It was an either or. Currently, there's effort of having intermediate steps of trying to control the flow. And I think I voted for all of them that have passed. I don't know if we've had anything that didn't pass.
The Democrats in the House have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we got a lot of thoughts on that one. Things, when you're in supermajority, it's going to pass. We voted against it because it was just an overreach. I tell folks, about 45 seconds, the whole Tennessee 3 thing. First, there's a reason behind it. We don't want to waste a lot of time, but there was a reason it sent them to the well, and it was that suppression of the voice. But for 45 seconds is all it takes. So what I equate it to in football analogy, if you jump off sides and they're doing a football game, it's the equivalent of you get penalized, kicked out of that game, and sent home. You can't play any sports for the rest of the year. That's how draconian that rule was. There's several things that could have been done. There's several things that could have been done within the rules to address it, but they went with the nuclear option. And now this year, to me, it's even worse. So we get 5 minutes to speak on a bill, which I'd say at its face is okay. But what happens is, and as you see the sessions, if I ask the question, if I spend a minute with my dialogue, laying out why I'm opposed to this bill, the sponsor can now use additional 4 minutes to drain the clock. And we're not getting the voice. The whole point of us being in Nashville, it's tough going back and forth, is to represent you all. And for a huge part of our constituency not to get that voice is upsetting. And we're not hearing that voice on the House floor. There was a representative that said, well, you guys speak way more than we do. Well, that's because when you're in a supermajority, you get all that information before the House. First time we're seeing it is on the House floor, so we're responding in real time. That's not how it works. You have to give the minority voice some opinion, some abilities, and it's very frustrating. It's extremely frustrating, and they're too much. The Senate doesn't do that, and they don't have these issues. There's a couple of people that just, when their voice comes through the microphone, they turn off. And to pass a law for a couple of folks or rule for a couple of folks makes absolutely no sense.
Well, you know, they do equate the Senate to a senior citizens home, so that's just kind of what, it's kind of why there's that respect there, and you get to know everybody. Sorry, Gloria, I have to.
That's okay.
We have to leave, and I do apologize, but when we were invited, we were told this ended at 10 o'clock too, so that's why I told the dental hygienist we'd come, but come late. So thank y'all for being here. Greatly appreciate you doing it, and thank you again.
Thank you all so much for listening.
I want to hit on that point as well, though. Yeah, there are many times when mics are shut down, they say we're off the bill. We are not off the bill. We are on the argument and the discussion of the bill. And it's random, and they can always get their folks to vote it down because they have that super majority. Used to be on the floor in the morning when you came in, you could talk about, during welcoming and honoring, you could talk about something that happened in the country or in the state and, bring that to the floor. In the last few years, it's become political speeches, and ours get stopped, but theirs do not. And they have now said you have to do your welcoming and honoring in 1 minute. There have been people that are standing up on both sides of the aisle who are standing up and talking about maybe a veteran who was highly decorated who passed away, and they just cut them off. Or something important about a constituent in their district, and they're just cut off and can't talk about that. To me, that is ridiculous. And when I was there in 13 and 14, when Beth Harwell was the speaker, they had a supermajority. She never cut a mic, and she never left someone standing up with their hand raised. She called on everyone. She was not afraid of the democratic norms and processes. She wasn't afraid of debate on legislation. But these folks don't want debate on these bills. And it's really something that we have to pay attention to. And one of the things, is it okay if I talk about a bill that a lot of people don't know about?
Absolutely.
And why they don't know about it? There's a bill by Ryan Williams, I think it's 1911. And what this bill does, on the website today, on the website, it says that this bill is about changing font size. Yes. And this bill is giving charter operators the ability to buy any decommissioned public school building. They get first shot. It won't go to a local nonprofit that works with the schools. It won't do any of those things. They get first shot to buy the property either at cost or below. It says, yesterday, one of my colleagues tried to say they have to buy it at cost. No, the bill strictly says at cost or below. Then also in the bill, if they do purchase this building with problems, the LEA is on the hook for fixing that building up to standard. But the building is still owned by the charter operator. We know that a lot of charter schools are gone after 3 years. And guess who owns that building? The county that restored it and kept it up? No, absolutely not. The charter operator. And that is why charter schools are typically run by hedge fund managers and venture capitalists. It's about the properties. So now they're going to require LEAs to put every single property in Knox County that falls under that's underutilized or whatever, on the state website, and then charter operators can ask basically for their bargain real estate list. And that bill has already passed through House Committee. It's gonna be headed into Senate Committee. You heard it.
He got rolled. He rolled it last week,
okay.
but it'll be up next week.
But people don't know about this, and you need to reach out to your representatives. This is gonna cost you all. You all will be paying to refurbish these buildings, and then some hedge fund manager who started a charter school mainly for the real estate is going to reap the benefits when that charter school closes down. And
Yeah, I thank you for that. And just to make it real, when we say LEA, Knox County, so let's make this about Knox County, and let's say Knox Prep, who's coming here with I would say a split vote. So Fair Garden, the school I went to elementary school, right down a little east of here, is a K3, K4 school right now, which means they don't use the second floor. Great school, doing great. The second floor is not used because you got babies there, but it's utilized. That school will be considered underutilized by their definition, and they could say, we want Fair Garden. And still unclear, can Knox County say no, it's being used, but there'll be a conversation had, and they could put Fair Garden on the rolls, giving Knox Prep first bite at the apple. So you could have, someone wants to do a great thing with it, no, Knox Prep gets the first bite at the apple, at or below cost, and they are run by hedge fund venture capitalists. They're coming from Chattanooga. 3 years they can say this isn't working. I think it's probably going to happen because I don't think Knoxville has an appetite for these charter schools other than Emerald. I guess they're doing okay. And now this hedge fund operator have a great piece of property in the up and coming district. So trying to bring it home, this is what this bill would do, and that happens in and out our urban and suburban areas in our state.
And I think the bill number on that is House Bill 1191, right, Representative?
And we can stop it if they hear from folks.
Yeah.
But people don't know about it, they think it's about font size.
Yep.
So how are they able to do that?
So she asked how were they able to do that? It's maddening. They could do what they call a caption bill. And a caption bill, as long as it's in education, and this bill really says, change the font size from a size 16 to size 18. You amend it to put what you really want in there. There's several captions out there right now. One could go and make, anybody that says hello to someone, they can make that illegal. They can put whatever they want in that caption bill. It's a way to get around the information and to put it on quickly, so I would say the public doesn't have an opportunity.
Do you have another, let's go right here, yeah.
Well, oh God. It's probably a waste of time at this point because it was really addressed to the three people who have already left. But if you know the answer, my question is, why do they think they have the right to sit and decide on a woman's reproductive choices when all kinds of interviews and surveys have indicated the majority of people in this country, not to mention just the state of Tennessee, are against that bill? Why do they think they have the right to do that? I don't understand it, and I'm sorry if I sound naive, but they haven't considered the economic consequences, the consequences to a child that's born unwanted, abused. It's mind-boggling, and I have been trying to figure out how can anybody make a decision like this against another person's right to exist.
They're listening to organizations, Right to Life, some of these organizations that come in, they use religion to make it a religious issue, when in actuality, this is an issue of bodily autonomy, and women aren't equal if they don't have autonomy over their own bodies. And the idea that we're forcing 10-year-olds to carry a pregnancy should be horrifying to absolutely everyone. And, it is unfortunate that this is where we are, but when they get reelected, they consider they have a mandate on every single issue. They think that it gives them a mandate, and that's why it's critical to show an election. People need to vote right. They need to vote for what really affects them. The fact that 2 women down the street from you, that doesn't make your life terrible, it doesn't affect your life. But not being able to put food on the table and keep the lights on because you're making a low wage or you don't have access to health care, those are the things that affect you, and we have to really make sure that people understand that this is about women being equal. This is about women being safe and healthy and deciding when to start their own families. I don't think they're ever going to get it until they feel it in their elections.
Agreed.
And yeah.
So, I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and there's a bill up this year, and I'm trying to look up the number, but I don't have it right now, that would make it very difficult for third-party organizations to help register people to vote. The bill is designed to make everyone who goes out and helps register people have to go through some state-mandated training, which isn't set in the bill what it would be. It'll be decided later. So it would make the process very difficult and very expensive to do what not just the League of Women Voters, but lots of organizations do to help get more people registered to vote. Again, not all the right people are in the room, but are people aware that this is going on and trying to fight that?
Yeah, the right people may be in the room, just need to be more of us. So, Trey Hargett, Secretary of State, came to, they have what they call budget hearings. I'm on the Finance Committee, and he came on last Monday to talk about his organization, which he and Mark Lawrence, who's over elections, statewide elections, came to speak. They tout all of these programs they're doing to encourage people to vote. Actually, very difficult to pass a bill just to say twice a year, we're going to announce in the high schools that, hey, you may be, if you're turning 18, you may have the right to vote. Here's a QR code, here's a website to go. They fight that, and we are in the lower tier of voter participation statewide, and it's things like this, it's those underlying things. So he was asked about that. And basically what it is you're right, this goes through, you won't be able to just go and pick up, and even now you can't just go and pick up a stack of voter registration cards, and you can be held liable if something's in error or there was someone came and they willfully did something. You as a person that took that application can be held liable. So they're trying to, again, make it a lot more difficult to register people. And he just talked about election integrity, making sure that the people that can vote are voting. I guess there's 5 people in Clarksville that they're have accused of not being voting correctly in the right district, and they're not approved to vote. Very, very aggressive. We as a state are the only ones that don't let our release felons who are eligible to vote simply because they owe child support. I have a bill trying to get through criminal to in fact, Representative Johnson heard it a couple of weeks ago. I'm having to morph it again. So it's bad, but they realize voting's power. Voting is strength. We're not a supermajority state. We're just drawn that way, and I think more and more as people know and grow. So I would just encourage you to keep registering people, keep pushing that agenda to get people registered and empower them to vote whomever they wish to vote for, but to vote.
Let me follow with another voting related question. There's a bill about absentee ballots that would increase, I think, up to 10 days the amount of time before an election that you have to request an absentee ballot. The explanation for this is that the current 7-day window doesn't give enough time in a lot of cases for those ballots to be mailed back and for people to get on the rolls, and so that they think they're registered and they're not. Do you have any thoughts about that bill and or other, there have been other approaches to that same problem mentioned?
And here's what I ask folks at Trey Hargett's office. Give me the number of ballots that came in the next 3 days. Prove to me that 7 days wasn't enough. Still waiting on an answer. It's an attempt just, again, to suppress the vote. Just small iterations to suppress the vote. There aren't a ton of applications coming in 2 and 3 days later after the vote. So that 7 to 10 days, somebody's looked at some data somewhere and says, hey, we're getting a last minute surge of people wanting to vote. They have that right. To me, same day, if I'm eligible to vote, that's my right to vote. And we need to open that pipeline as far as we can. Again, I care who you vote for personally, but it doesn't matter who you vote for, what party you represent. You need to have the right to vote. Our voter laws, when you looked at Georgia, people went crazy on Georgia when they passed these, I would call them voter suppression laws. You stack them up against Tennessee, we're still worse than that. We don't have drop boxes. We don't have, a lot of the voting things that they have in Georgia, and they're a little upset about it.
It really is death by 1,000 cuts. They took some big shots at it, and they were found to be unconstitutional and those kinds of things. Now they're doing these little hacks that seem like nothing. They're doing the same thing with bail reform currently, where they've got 1 million different bills that are all pointed at taking bail away from folks. And it may seem harmless in one bill, but we've got one where 2 representatives bill. When you put those together, if those both pass, then they're going to have huge implication. And we are not going to incarcerate our way to safety. We need to work on prevention.
And I think on that absentee ballot bill, I believe Tennessee and Mississippi are the only 2 states that don't let people just return absentee ballots themselves. You have to send it through the mail, which is where a lot of that backup comes from. Yeah, question all the way to the back.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Finch. I'm with New Directions Healthcare Solutions. My question is, what are you all going to do about the fact that we don't have expanded Medicaid? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do other than the next election to get another governor? So tell me, what can we do as citizens as it relates to access to care? It don't make any sense while we can't accept money so that everybody can have insurance.
You are exactly right. And, they sort of quash that conversation because they won't hear the legislation. We have to make them listen. And here's what I'm doing this year. I have a bill to expand Medicaid. And when I just mentioned prevention, I was sitting in committee at the very first week of the legislature, and we were talking about crime, and then we talked about health care. And I was like, there has to be a correlation with Medicaid expansion. So I went to studies on Medicaid expansion and crime. And what I found out was in every state that expanded Medicaid, within the first 3 years, violent crime dropped 19 to 29%. 20 to 30%. Can you imagine if we dropped violent crime 20 to 30%? Drug crime is reduced 25 to 41%. These numbers are huge. If we expanded Medicaid, these states have saved, depending on the state, have saved between $1 billion and $5 billion a year because they're not arresting these folks and they're not incarcerating people. So Medicaid expansion, in addition to improving our economy because people get back to work because they're healthy, it's going to reduce crime. We have a proliferation of gun problems in this state. Violent crime reduced by 20 to 30%. Imagine that. Another huge thing that reduces crime is raising the wage. We raise the wage, and you see a huge difference in youth crime, especially when you raise the wage. So we are keeping violence in Tennessee by proliferating guns and not bringing policy that prevents violence.
Once again, what can we do?
Well, I've got the bill. People need to show up. We used to have hundreds, thousands show up at the Capitol for health care. And if they don't see the people and hear from the people, they're not going to talk about it. But there are plenty of Republicans who still support this. I think we would have Dr. Briggs and Senator Massey on board if we were to do this. So we've got to show up and speak up and stand up and force them to have the conversation.
We'll be there on Tuesday.
Awesome.
Mr. Tallman, all the way at the back.
Thank you. I'm a member of the Community Advisory Group for Knoxville Preparatory School, and I'm duty-bound to offer a response to your challenging of the motivation at the interest of the leaders of Chattanooga Knoxville Preparatory School, that they're motivated solely for stripping the asset value of Fair Garden School is beneath the dignity of this discussion. Chattanooga Preparatory School in Knoxville has exuberant, rambunctious young men in competition with each other to see who can read the most books. If you think that's a problem, then that's fine. Before I engaged myself and attached my name to Knoxville Preparatory School, I reached out to one of the star principals in the Knox County schools, and I said, what do you think of it? She said, we have to do it. We've got young people who are falling off the map. And what we know about COVID and the disruption of learning, I think it's a civilizational emergency in my view. So I can't speak to the motivation of people at Knoxville Preparatory School. I can only say to interested people in this community that from everything I've observed, they are in it for all the right reasons. Now, they may have had various in terms of their the things in their prior business experience, which has led to their good fortune. But they are committed for all the right reasons to helping boys in our community. So I take some umbrage at that characterization of their motivation.
I'd be happy to respond to that, and very, very respectfully, we can agree to disagree, but here's what I'll say about the Knox Prep entry into Knoxville. It was a bait and switch. They were supposed to got with Pastor Arnold and those folks. They brought a community outreach person in. They promised principals that a principal that they did not deliver on. They did not deliver on a location. Now they're out in North Knoxville at the Boys and Girls Club. And if you look at Chattanooga Prep, I'm a data-driven decision person. You look at their overall reading, the achievement, the score out of 100. They're about 17, Hamilton County's about 30. So I challenged the veracity of the success of Chattanooga Prep, and it's been around for a while. Again, and you look at their push-out rate. Well, by that I mean, charter schools have the right to say, Sally, you can go back, Johnny, you can go back to public schools. Public schools take all smiling faces and frowning faces that come into their door. So again, we don't have to go back and forth, but I challenge you to look at what Chattanooga Prep has done, and that's not just you, everybody, and see, is this what we want for Knox County? And so I would dare say, I'm hopeful they'll turn it around, but they've gone through 3 principals, they're at the 3rd principal, and they haven't been there a day yet. So in terms of a body of work. So we'll see.
No, we're not going to get into debate about any given issue. Another question, yes, Joyce.
So Jesse brought up rules, and you probably saw Phil Williams's video they did last year about the difference between a voice vote or roll call vote, and how a lot of committees, even though they're supposed to do a roll call vote, they do a voice vote, and it's not clear that who they say wins always is actually the winner. Is that can legislation affect that? Like, could there be, or is that just up to the House to determine their own rules? Can you legislate the requirement for a roll call vote in a committee?
It's a House rule, the Senate does the roll call vote. It's interesting to hear my colleagues complain about that. They don't like to be on record. We actually, when we vote no, after we vote no, they tell us we have to let the clerk know we want to record our no vote. I didn't say no for the heck of it. Of course I want my no vote recorded, but we have to tell them to record it because they like to be not on the record and it just says ayes prevail. And so a lot of times what we do is when we go up, used to be you could ask for a roll call vote at any point when you're running a bill. Now you have to ask for a roll call vote before you say a word. And if you forget and you want to ask for it after you finish talking about your bill, they won't honor it.
Will they honor it if you request it?
If you request it at the beginning, but some committees, if you're hearing it in full, they'll say, well, you didn't ask for it in subcommittee, so you can't get it in full. They make the rules up as they go, quite frankly.
You know, and it's a numbers game. So you could also, if you had 3 committee members, say, I want a roll call vote, you would get it. I'm on 2 subcommittees, but I'm the only person in minority, only Democrat on it, so it won't happen. So if I have a member who's coming up and they did not, the first thing out of their mouth has to be, I'm requesting a roll call vote. If they don't do that, they're basically done, because I'll be the only one that will
You have to have 3 hands.
You gotta have 3 hands.
How often do you think that they're miscalling the voice vote?
Well, you know, probably not too often in terms of the majority. I would say it may happen, it may, and I don't want to give it a number. It doesn't happen a lot, but it's more so they don't want people in their district to know that they voted for this bill or against that bill. They just say, well, it's just a roll call vote. It didn't register. So they'll have plausible deniability.
We have time for one more question. Yes, Dr. Hunter.
I'm a professor at the University of Tennessee, and some other things Sam knows, Gloria knows. But I teach sometimes a graduate course in communication theory. 20-year-old minds, some older, who are quite capable of evaluating ideas, thinking about things, rejecting some, accepting others. And yet, your colleagues don't want me to dare say the word critical race theory. In a communication theory class, it might be relevant, especially when I'm talking about political economy of communication. What business do they have barging into my syllabus?
None. I always thought the reason you went to college was to discuss ideas, maybe ideas you hadn't thought about before, and learn new things and see different perspectives. But the idea, it was horrible when they passed it for K-12. It was just horrible. And the bill is so contradictory of itself throughout. But when they passed it for university, I was pretty much in shock. Because if we can't discuss those ideas, I mean, that is what higher learning is about. And I don't think they have any right if you're discussing what works in your classroom and addressing the curriculum you address. Yes, you absolutely do have to talk about that a lot of times, and it creates the best discussions. You can have a great discussion on fairness and race in kindergarten, because kindergartens get fairness. That's what we're talking about. So it is horrifying to me that we can't address issues that are so critical, because history has shown us that not talking about it does not solve problems.
Yeah, as you all know, the whole concept of critical race theory it's a higher ed issue. So the fact that it was introduced in K-12, saying, I got a 3rd grade at Williamson County that said this, that's asinine. That's not. It's a conceptual thing that should be taught in your class, in senior level law school, and those types of course curriculum. So it's one of these buzz phrase catchwords that caught on. It caught on, and it became a negative talking point. But and DEI is similar. If you look at University of Tennessee's organizational chart, you won't see 3 words. You won't see diversity, you won't see equity, you won't see inclusion anymore. Saw it 365 days ago, you won't see it today. I'm hoping that they've still committed to that. They promised that they are, but in terms of organizational structure, the General Assembly forced them to change how they approach their students. And to say that all things, have equalized is to me is the big lie.
All right, well, I think that about wraps us up. I'm going to ask both of you if you just want to make any concluding remarks. And Maria, do you want to come back up to close this out?
I will give Gloria the last word, but again, thank you all for these types of forums. I wish we had, and I'm glad we had bipartisan representation here. I wish our schedules could have allowed everyone to remain, but it's discussions like these, hopefully that will prick you all and say, hey, let's continue to dig in. Let's continue to have a conversation, a tough conversation, one that you may not agree with me on everything, and that's okay. That is okay. I'm not going to vote in your party. That's okay, but at least we can get in the same room and discuss the same issue to give you all different sides of the same thing. So again, thank this facility, Ms. Mack, thank the League of Women Voters and the professional journalists. I say all the time, we need better journalism in Nashville. We need more coverage. To Joyce's point, people hide behind their votes. They do things in Nashville and that doesn't necessarily represent. And if they you all knew how they were voting, you would be appalled at some of the votes. But it's not covered the way it used to be covered. So thank you all for keeping the industry and the movement alive, because it really is needed. I'm hearing we're going to get more coverage locally here, but thank you all for all that you do.
Yes, thank everyone. It's hard. There's journalism is limited, you know, and that's why some of these bills get by saying crazy stuff on the website, but people don't know what they're about. So thank you all for showing up, for caring about this. I can tell you, I've never seen so many engaged folks before, and I appreciate that so much, because it's really going to take us, and we'll do our best to get out information about some of these things that you might not be aware of. But I just appreciate you all so much for paying attention and caring about your community, and just make sure that, you know, we need representation that respects the human dignity of every single Tennessean and not just a few. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for partnering with ETSPJ to have this event. Also want to thank all three Knoxville TV stations, WATE, WVLT, and WPIR, for coming on a Saturday morning. Obviously, it's not the most compelling visual, but it's a very important event to cover. Turnout was outstanding. Thank you to the YWCA. This is a very accessible venue with parking, and I think it would be a great event to keep holding here, because it really does make it easy for people to attend.
Hey,
Thank
Gloria, can we thank Jesse?
Yes. Absolutely. If you do not subscribe to the Compass, you should. Jesse's co-founder. It is the go-to source to get detailed information on everything that happens in Knoxville and Knox County vote-wise. As has been illustrated by all of the representatives and senators here, it's absolutely vital that the public knows what their elected officials are doing.
Maria, I would just add that Compass is fantastic, but add to that list Tennessee Lookout and Tennessee Holler.
Yeah.
They bring valuable news about what our state government is doing. If you haven't checked them out, you must.
Also, Tennessee Journal, that one's a
Tennessee
little
Journal.
pricier, but
Pricey.
it is terrific if you care about state government.
Yeah, they're good.
Yes, we need everyone to support journalism. It has taken hits like every industry has, and engage voters and engage citizens like yourself. So thank you so much for coming. For the TV stations, I will be happy to do any one-on-one interviews, so will anybody with the league, and Representative Johnson and McKenzie may be available for that too. So thank you, and we will see you again in a year for the 2025 award. So thank you for coming.